The laughter faded, and a deep silence filled the room, a silence that would change everything. When Alana turned to John and asked, "Do you want to marry Zuri?" She had no idea how deeply those words would echo through hearts, through families, through generations. What began as an act of love soon became a test of faith, family, and forgiveness. Zuri's quiet yes set in motion a journey from the Stein farmhouse to the red earth of Mpumalanga, from forbidden love to a sacred blessing. In this episode, hearts are bound, secrets are revealed, and generations confront truths that have lived in shadow for far too long. From Alana's tears to Gogo Thoko's wisdom, from whispered prayers to a father's trembling embrace, this is a story of love that refuses to die and faith that refuses to break. Episode highlights: a quiet proposal becomes a sacred blessing. Zuri's tender moment of faith before the ceremony. The truth behind the Zikalala family's generational curse. A father's forgiveness and a daughter's homecoming. The Stein's journey to Mpumalanga for the Lobola. A love that defies shame and births new beginnings. Because in the heart of love, even sin can find redemption. If this story moves your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment of a sin called love.
The laughter faded, and a deep quiet settled over the room. Alana's expression shifted from playful to serious as she turned to her husband. "Now, on a serious note," she said softly. "John, do you want to marry Zuri?" John looked up, his heart pounding. There was no hesitation in his eyes. "Yes," he said, the word steady and certain. "Yes, I do. I do because of my own feelings for her, but mostly because of how she fits into our family. She feels like home." Alana nodded gently, then turned to Zuri. "So, Zuri, would you like to join our family?" Zuri's cheeks flushed a deep, shy pink. Words stuck in her throat as she tried to process the enormity of the question. But then a wave of reality crashed over her. Her heart ached with the question that had suddenly risen in her chest. "How will our families take this?" she whispered. John and Alana exchanged a knowing glance, and with a quiet nod, they turned back to her. "Our families will have to understand," John said firmly. "Love, Zuri. Love has no limits. And there are no limits that will stop us." Her heart beat faster, torn between longing and fear. "Oh, but my father," she said, her voice trembling. "What would he say?" "He would never allow it, not unless I was already pregnant. And that is not an option." Alana was silent for a long moment, her eyes searching Zuri's face. Then she asked gently, "Is it really not an option?" The question stunned the room into silence. Even John's eyes widened. "Alana," he breathed, "are you serious?" "Yes," she said through a rush of emotion. "I am. We are a family filled with love, true love. We are not trying to hurt anyone. We just want to build a life together. With our children." Her voice broke, and tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Zuri felt the weight of those words, the sincerity in them, the vision of a life built on love, not bound by convention. Tears welled in her eyes too, falling softly as her heart wrestled with fear and hope. John's own eyes glistened, his voice low and unsteady. "If it's okay with you, Zuri, we can do that," he said. "We can have a small ceremony, just us and my friend. Stephen can bless our union before anything formal is done." Alana smiled through her tears, reaching for John's hand and then Zuri's. Zuri tried to smile back, but the weight of it all pressed heavy on her chest. The thought of disappointing her family, of breaking her father's heart, made the fear claw at her ribs. Still, beneath that fear was something undeniable: love. Deep, uncheckable love. And it was waiting for her, right there, in the eyes of the two people sitting across from her. The following morning dawned soft and golden, the rain of the night before leaving the air crisp and new. John was awake before sunrise, pacing the veranda with his phone clutched in his hand. Zuri had said yes, she had agreed to join the Stein family as Mrs. John Stein. His heart still fluttered at the thought. He dialed Stephen's number as soon as it was polite to do so. "John," Stephen answered warmly, already sounding as though he knew why his friend was calling. "Stephen," John said, steadying his breath, "I need a favor. Zuri and we want to have a small blessing ceremony. Just family. Nothing big." There was a pause, but not a long one. Stephen had known the shape of this story for a while now, the complex dynamics, the unorthodox love. "It doesn't shock me," he said finally. "I've seen how things are with you. I just hope I'm not doing anything wrong by agreeing." "You're not," John replied gently. "We're doing this in love. True love." Stephen exhaled, then chuckled softly. "Then let's do it." Plans moved quickly after that. They arranged for a small caterer to come the following weekend. John and Alana sat the girls down and explained the new family dynamics that Zuri would soon become part of the family in a deeper way. The twins squealed with excitement, thrilled to sleep that night. They picked out a simple but beautiful dress for Zuri, soft and elegant, while John already had a suit hanging in his wardrobe. Zuri, in turn, bought Alana and the girls lovely dresses of their own. It wasn't just a ceremony, it was a family celebration. When Saturday arrived, Zuri rose before dawn. She knelt by her bed and whispered prayers into the stillness of the morning, asking for peace, for strength, for the courage to step into this new chapter. Her hands trembled, but her heart was sure. John stood at the front beside Alana, his hands clasped, trying not to cry. Stephen and his wife Susan were there too, smiling warmly, their presence grounding the moment. And then Zuri appeared. She walked slowly on the green grass, clutching a small bouquet of roses John had collected from the garden that morning. The world seemed to still as she moved closer. Stephen began to pray as she reached the front, a deep, heartfelt prayer that spoke of love, unity, grace, and purpose. The words carried such power that soon everyone joined in, voices overlapping in whispered pleas and praises, tears streaming down cheeks. Emotions swelled in the room, and when Stephen finally spoke the words of blessing over their union, the atmosphere shifted. Something sacred and irreversible had taken root. Then, in a burst of lightheartedness, Alana grinned through her tears and shouted, "Kiss! Kiss!" The room erupted in giggles. John stepped closer, and Zuri's breath caught as he leaned in and kissed her gently, just a small, tender peck. But to her, it felt like the earth shifted beneath her feet. The warmth spread through her entire body, and the world, her world, spun gently into place. It was done. It wasn't a grand wedding. It wasn't legal yet, but it was real, a blessing, a promise, a family choosing love without limits. And in that small farmhouse living room, as the morning sun poured through the windows and their laughter echoed against the walls, a new chapter began. That night she spoke to her family for a brief moment. Zinhol saw something different in her sister's eyes, something mature. That look did not fool Gogo Thoko. She saw it as well. They did not know how to name it, but something was different. That night in the cottage was unlike anything any of them had ever known. There was no rush, no storm of passion, only gentleness. Careful hands, soft words spoken in whispers between steady breaths. They talked through everything before a single touch was shared, ensuring every moment was understood and welcomed. It was new for both of them. Slow and patient, tender and reverent. Each movement felt like a promise, each breath like a prayer. What unfolded there was something neither Zuri nor John had ever imagined. Magical, that was the only word that could describe it. Time moved gently in the weeks that followed. Their days were still filled with laughter, chores, prayers, and the rhythm of life on the farm. But beneath it all, there was a new depth to their bond, a quiet joy that grew stronger with each sunrise. And then, one soft afternoon, everything shifted again. Zuri felt unwell, a strange wave of nausea, a fluttering exhaustion she couldn't explain. She brushed it off at first, thinking it was nothing more than fatigue, but the feeling persisted, day after day. It wasn't long before the truth revealed itself. Zuri is going to be a mother. The realization washed over her slowly, a mixture of disbelief, joy, and quiet fear. She would carry a piece of this love within her now, a new life, born from something sacred and unexpected. A month later, Alana went into labor. Zuri was at her side every step of the way, never once leaving her. Even through her own dizzy spells and waves of nausea, she refused to rest. She held Alana's hand, whispered prayers, wiped her brow, and reminded her to breathe. And when the cries of the newborn twins filled the farmhouse, joy swept through them all, louder, deeper, more radiant than ever before. In that moment, Zuri's heart swelled with a love she hadn't known she was capable of. For Alana, for John, for the children now swaddled in soft blankets, a baby girl, Gabriella, and a baby boy and for the tiny heartbeat she now carried inside her. Life, it seemed, had written a story far more beautiful than any of them could have dreamed. The letter arrived quietly, tucked into a plain envelope and slipped beneath the door of the Zikalala home. Joseph returned from the fields late that afternoon, tired and dusty, only to find it lying on the kitchen table. He opened it, and the world around him seemed to stop. A Lobala letter, a formal request from the Stain family to begin marriage negotiations for his daughter. Joseph's hands shook as he read, then the anger came, fierce and unrelenting. They took advantage of my little girl, he shouted, the paper crumpling in his fist. They took her innocence. I will make them pay. His voice thundered through the house. Namsa, sitting silently at the table, wept softly into her hands. Her heart was broken, not just by the letter, but by the realization that their little girl was no longer a little girl at all. Gogo Thoko listened quietly, then rose slowly from her chair. Come, she said gently, all of you, into the big room. The family gathered in the newly renovated living room. The younger children were sent off to watch a movie in their room, unaware of the storm brewing in the house. Joseph couldn't sit. He paced the floor, his chest heaving, tears of rage streaking down his face. How could they do this? He muttered again and again. Joseph, my son, Gogo Thoko said softly, please sit down. I have something to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago. When I was young, Gogo Thoko began. Before I had any of my children, I was told I needed to go Twasa to train as a sangoma. My family was sad, but they supported me. My uncle, though, was furious. He said the Gobala, the head trainer, would take advantage of me. I was sick all the time back then, so I went for healing, and I was healed. But when I returned home, she paused, her voice trembling. I was pregnant. Joseph stared at her, eyes wide. Namsa gasped quietly. I had fallen in love with the Gobala, and he with me, she continued. He asked my family if he could marry me, but they refused. I was 17, younger than Zuri is now. And yes, he was married. His wife could not have more children after the 2 kids she had. Her husband wanted more kids. I didn't fall in love with him because of that. It just happened. He had 2 small children already. And then I gave birth to your older sister, Tembi. Joseph was speechless. My father was a Gobala. He whispered, no, that's not possible. Yes, my son, she said gently. It's true. Back then, we were taught never to speak of such secrets. After Tembi, I gave birth to Temba. My father disowned me because I continued having children with a married man. She paused and looked him directly in the eyes. Do you remember Ma'am Mavis from your father's family? Joseph nodded slowly. Her children, Teddy and Boss, call your father Dad, Gogo Thoko said quietly. Joseph felt the room tilt. He dropped back into his chair, his breath shallow. The pieces began falling into place, memories he had never understood suddenly made sense. Ma'am Mavis was his father's first wife. Tandy and Boss were his siblings. Boss, who looked so much like him, was his twin, born 8 years earlier. After Temba, Gogo Thoko continued, you were born. By then, Ma'am Mavis had accepted the strange family dynamic. And then, one day, an old woman came to our house, uninvited but full of the fire of God. She told us to kneel and pray. We thought no one could tell us anything. We had performed witchcraft rituals around our home. We lied to people to make them believe they needed our help, and they paid us well. But this woman, she spoke the gospel. She told us to repent, to stop what we were doing, or our descendants would suffer as I had. We laughed at her. We had money, power, but from that moment, everything started falling apart. One by one, the Twazanas we trained left. We had to return all their money. We were left in poverty in a matter of hours. Tears now streamed down her cheeks, but she kept speaking. Your father Joseph was not a real Gobala. It was his business. He was blessed to share the word of God, which he didn't at the time. That Saturday, your father gathered all the herbs, the animal skins, the charms, everything, and we threw them into the river. When we returned, my family was at the gate. They had come to take me and the children, so your father could do things properly. I was torn, but I left, and a week later, he came with his uncles to Lobala me. We had a small wedding celebration. Ma'am Mavis even agreed to let me live with him while she remained in his home. I had you, Joseph, and later your sister Tumi, in that marriage. So what I'm saying, Gogo Thoko whispered, for Zuri, encourage her to seek God's forgiveness, commit to living faithfully, and build her marriage on love and truth. For the family, support her journey with prayer, grace, and wisdom. Speak life over her future, not condemnation. For everyone, remember that cycles and not through rituals or fear, but through Christ-centered repentance, forgiveness, and intentional change. She wiped her eyes and exhaled shakily. I never told you or your siblings because we were ashamed. Even when your father became a pastor, I kept the secret. People called me the pastor's wife and Ma'am Mavis your aunt. But the truth, Joseph, the truth is the only thing that can break this cycle. The room remained silent, the weight of generations pressing in. Joseph sat motionless, his mind racing, his heart breaking and healing all at once. The letter still lay on the table where he had thrown it, no longer just a piece of paper, but a chance to rewrite the story of their family. The Lobula letter had set the Zikalala home ablaze with emotion, a fury first, then grief, and finally a long, heavy silence. But over the days that followed, prayers softened hearts that anger had hardened. Joseph paced the floors until his knees hit the mat beside his bed. Namsa wept until she could only whisper, "Thy will be done," and Gogo Thoko, wise and steady as ever, reminded them that love, though often inconvenient, is still a gift from God. And so, in the end, the family agreed. The Lobula negotiations would go ahead. A week later, the Stain family, John, Alana, the children, and Zuri, boarded a plane bound for Mpumalanga. The air hummed with nerves and anticipation. John squeezed Alana's hand during the flight, whispering prayers under his breath. Zuri stared out of the window, her heart a battlefield, love and shame, joy and fear, all warring quietly within her. The plane touched down under a pale blue sky, the tires kissing the tarmac with a soft screech. John reached for her hand without a word, his thumb brushing gently across her knuckles. He could feel her heartbeat racing through her palm. Alana leaned forward from the seat behind them, whispering, "It's going to be okay, Zuri, one step at a time." The twins giggled in the row ahead, pressing their faces against the window. Daniel was already trying to wriggle out of his seatbelt, eager to run again. As they disembarked, the warm air wrapped around them, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and rain. Zuri tightened her head wrap and adjusted her bride-to-be hoodie, the words now feeling heavier, like a promise and a challenge all at once. As arranged, John, Alana, and the children took Zuri toward the township, then went on ahead to the Boda farm. She had imagined this day countless times, but nothing prepared her for the moment she stepped out of the car and saw it. The Zikalala house, transformed. The once small, crumbling dwelling now stood proud and modern, painted in warm earth tones, with a wide veranda and glass-paneled windows that sparkled in the sun. A new chapter had clearly begun here in her absence. And yet, Zuri's breath caught not from joy but from terror. How will they look at me? What will Baba say when he sees what I've done? The weight of her choices pressed heavily on her chest. Before she could stop herself, tears spilled down her cheeks. Her steps faltered. Then, overwhelmed by shame, she turned and began to walk away, her sobs breaking the quiet afternoon air. Joseph stepped out onto the veranda just in time to see her, his little girl, crumbling under the weight of her own embarrassment. He froze, his heart splitting at the sight of her rounded belly, the one she hid behind trembling hands. "Zuri," he called, his voice breaking. She stopped but didn't turn. The sound of his voice ended what little strength she had left. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the dusty path, weeping into her palms. Joseph ran. He dropped to his knees beside her, gathering her into his arms without hesitation, without judgment. "It's okay, Metwanam," he whispered, his own tears falling into her hair. "It's okay. We will work around it together, as a family." For a long time, they simply held each other, father and daughter, broken and healing in the same breath. When they returned to the house, the yard exploded with movement. Zinho, Zema, Lethakuthula, and Zakal came running, shouting her name, arms thrown around her in a tangle of hugs and tears. Even Lethakuthula, her 15-year-old cousin, clung to her as if she'd never let go. Inside, Gogo Thoko and Gogo Mavis waited with Namsa, their faces wet with tears and radiant with joy. Joseph's eyes were red, his chest still heaving with emotion. Zuri could hardly breathe under the flood of love and memory. They led her gently into the newly renovated living room, warm, spacious, alive with the scent of fresh paint and home-cooked stew. Zuri barely registered any of it. All she could think about was the life growing inside her and the shame that still clung to her skin. Zackle broke the silence first, his little voice bright with innocent curiosity. "Zuri," he said, squinting at her belly, "did you eat too much?" The room froze, and then Joseph burst into laughter, the tension shattering in an instant. Everyone followed, the laughter bubbling over like a release valve. Namsa knelt beside Zackle and explained gently, "No, Mintonami. Zuri is going to be a mommy, and she's getting married." The older siblings already knew, but hearing it said aloud made it real. Zema slipped onto the couch beside Zuri and placed her small hand on her sister's belly, rubbing it softly, reverently. Zuri felt tears spring to her eyes again, not of shame this time, but of something deeper, belonging. Gogo Mavis asked the children to give the adults a moment alone. Zuri instinctively started to rise too, forgetting that she was no longer counted among the children. "Sit," Namsa said softly, and she obeyed, cheeks warm with embarrassment. Gogo Mavis asked the children to give the adults a moment alone. Zuri instinctively started to rise too, forgetting that she was no longer counted among the children. "Sit," Namsa said softly, and she obeyed, cheeks warm with embarrassment. "Zuri, my baby," Gogo Mavis began, her voice lined with age and tenderness. "You look sad, stressed. Tell us, were you forced into this? You can tell us the truth." Joseph stiffened. "If they hurt you." "Joseph," Namsa warned, silencing him. Zuri wiped her eyes and shook her head quickly, her voice trembling with sincerity. "No, they didn't hurt me. They treated me like family from the very first day. Would you like to tell us how this all came to be?" Gogo Thoko asked gently, glancing at Joseph. He sighed and rose from his seat, muttering that he needed air. Zuri felt lighter the moment the door closed behind him. She took a deep breath and began. "It happened from the first day," she said quietly, "when I got off the taxi and walked up to the Stain farmhouse. He drove down the hill to fetch Emmy, Mr. Stain. He stopped the hillocks right in front of me and..." She trailed off, smiling through her tears. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, my Gogos, and Baba." She glanced toward the door. "I'm sorry for disappointing you." Her voice broke, "But I will finish my studies. We're getting nannies, Alana, and I will make you proud." The words dissolved into sobs before she could say more. Namsa gathered her into her arms, rocking her like a child. "I saw the love in your eyes from the first day," Gogo Thoko said softly. "Right, Namsa." Namsa nodded. "I thought maybe it was one of the boys on the farm. But when I learned it was John, I feared he had taken advantage of you." "He didn't, Mama," Zuri said quickly, lowering her eyes but unable to hide her smile. "I found love, real love." Gogo Mavis chuckled through her tears. "It's written all over your face, Nana. Don't hide it." She reached across and took Zuri's hand. "Let me tell you something." Her eyes flicked toward Gogo Thoko, and the two old women exchanged a knowing smile. "Our family. We are not as simple as we look." And then they told her about the Gobala, about secrets and shame, about Tembi and Temba, about Joseph's father and Mam Mavis, about how love had twisted and healed their lives in ways none of them had ever spoken aloud. Zuri listened, wide-eyed. "Baba never told us," she whispered. "He didn't know," Namsa said gently. "Not until now." Zuri sat back, stunned. "Wow," she breathed. "Don't be embarrassed, my love," Namsa said softly. "I was pregnant at 18. Gogo Thoko was 17. And Gogo Mavis," her voice wavered, "was just 14 when she lost her baby." The room went still. Then Zuri rose and crossed the space between them, wrapping Gogo Mavis in a trembling, tearful hug. The old woman clung to her in return, her frail hands surprisingly strong. A new beginning. That night, as the moon rose over the Mpumalanga hills, the Zikalala home was filled not with shame but with peace, a peace born of truth, love, and acceptance. Zuri had come home trembling with fear, but she slept that night with her grandmother's words echoing in her heart. Cycles don't end with shame. They end with truth, forgiveness, and love. And for the first time in many months, Zuri believed that perhaps, just perhaps, her story wasn't a tragedy at all. Zuri, despite her growing belly, couldn't sit still. She fetched water with the younger ones, chopped vegetables, swept the yard, just as she used to. "Zuri, leave that," Namsa scolded for the third time that morning. "Someone will get it." Minutes later, Gogo Thoko added, "You must rest, my child. Carrying heavy things is not for you now." But Zuri only laughed softly and reached for another bucket. That was when Joseph had enough. He strode across the yard, took her gently but firmly by the hand, and said, "Mtanam, please, come into the house, and don't go outside again. That's an order." The firmness in his tone left no room for debate. The old ladies and Namsa chuckled with relief from the veranda. They all knew Zuri would never dare defy her father's word, and finally, their stubborn girl would rest. At the Boda farm, John, Ilana, and the children had been welcomed with open arms. The house brimmed with laughter, children everywhere, including their own. Racing through the halls and tumbling across the grass, John sat back on the stoop one evening, tea in hand, watching them play as the sun dipped below the horizon. His heart swelled. This was the life he had prayed for, a home overflowing with joy. But peace has a way of drawing out what's buried beneath it. Later that night, with Grandpa Jack and the children asleep, Jane broke the silence. "So, you really went through with this?" she asked, eyes sharp. "John, Zuri is so young. What did you say, or do, to make her agree? And why even continue this madness, Ilana? You were already pregnant with Gabriella and Ian by then. That pregnancy was smooth, thank God, but still." Her words tumbled out like stones, heavy and relentless. Ilana and John sat still, letting them fall. Peter remained silent, his face unreadable. Ilana's patience finally snapped. "Zuri and John fell in love, Jane," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "We didn't force anything." Jane's eyes widened. "Love? You led her into temptation. What kind of Christians are you? This is adultery." The words struck hard, harder than either of them expected. Shame crept across John's face, and Ilana's gaze dropped to the floor. Peter shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He knew Jane was right. Jane turned her fire on him. "And don't sit there acting innocent. Peter, this started because you suggested it." Peter sighed. "Yes," he admitted softly. "Yes, I did." "Now look," Jane said, her voice breaking. "You've tied that girl to this life forever. She's barely lived. She's traveled as far as Cape Town, that's it. And now she'd be a wife and mother for the rest of her life." John's voice was quiet, strained. "Jane, you're right. It is shameful. We fed our flesh." He swallowed hard. "I love Ilana more than I ever thought possible. But when Zuri arrived, I didn't imagine how deeply she'd affect me. When our eyes met, everything changed, for both of us. Then Ilana became pregnant, and all our focus shifted. But I brought it up again," he said. "So if you need someone to blame, blame me." Ilana nodded. "Yes, blame me too." Jane shook her head, tears welling. "I'm just -1 for her. Life could have been so much bigger." "We will travel with her," Ilana said gently. "With 9 children." Jane snapped. "5 yours, for possibly hers. Do you hear yourself?" Silence fell. Shame hung thick in the room. Finally, Peter broke the tension. "Enough, Jane," he said firmly. "They are our guests. What's done is done. Would anyone like some juice?" They murmured polite yeses, but no one spoke again that night. The truth was too heavy to lift. Morning brought a different air. Jane woke early, guilt gnawing at her. She remembered Zuri as a girl on the farm, barefoot, smiling, her laughter echoing across the fields. Jane feared that brightness might dim now, and though her words had come from a place of love, they had wounded. So she cooked a breakfast fit for forgiveness of fresh bread, farm butter, sausage, soft porridge, rhubarb steeping on the stove. Ilana awoke with her own guilt pressing on her chest. "Maybe we shouldn't have done this," she whispered. But John wrapped his arm around her and shook his head. "We did wrong, yes," he said softly. "But we cannot abandon Zuri now. We must walk through this as a family." Ilana awoke with her own guilt pressing on her chest. "Maybe we shouldn't have done this," she whispered. But John wrapped his arm around her and shook his head. "We did wrong, yes," he said softly. "But we cannot abandon Zuri now. We must walk through this as a family." When they all gathered in the kitchen, words tumbled out at once, apologies, laughter, even a few tears. They forgave each other and spoke no more of the night before. Together, they turned their attention to Saturday. The Lobola ceremony. The day arrived bright and hot. At the newly built Zikalala house, John stood outside with the stained men, pale, nervous, and visibly out of place. Yet they stood tall, determined, ready to show respect. Joseph and the uncles welcomed them warmly. The negotiations began, a rhythm of respect, laughter, and deliberate pauses. Zuri's lobola was set at just over, or 100,000, for her virginity, her youth, and because they were pulling her into a polygamist marriage. After having taken her innocence, there was no outrage from John. He nodded quietly at every figure mentioned. "I'd pay $1 million if I had to," he whispered to Alana. And he meant it. The terms agreed upon, plans were made. The wedding would be the following month. The Staines stayed on in Mpumalanga, friends back home tending the farm in their absence. What neither Alana nor Zuri knew was that John was secretly building Zuri a house of her own, across from the main home, the gift of dignity and independence. The traditional wedding was nothing short of breathtaking. Women wrapped in vibrant shweshu danced under the midday sun. Drums beat deep and steady. Children sang and played. The air itself seemed to shimmer with joy. Alana remained at the Zikalala home with the children, who were delighted by township life. She helped Namsa with meals, rocked babies, and listened to the old women's stories. For the first time in her life, Alana felt something she had never known so fully before: home. Meanwhile, Zuri and John spent 2 weeks away on their honeymoon, a gentle escape before returning to the life waiting for them. The call to repentance. When they returned, Gogo Mavis gathered everyone in the living room. The children sat cross-legged on the floor. The adults sat on couches, eyes fixed on the old woman, whose presence commanded silence. She began with the past, their family's tangled story of secrets, betrayals, and love. She spoke of the present, too, of Zuri and John, of choices made in weakness and in love. Then her tone shifted. "This is all wrong," she said quietly. The room froze. A chill swept through the air. "I will not lie," she continued. "It is bad. We all need to repent to me, Goko, your grandfather. We never repented. We just moved on." She turned her sharp eyes to John. "And you. Don't you dare add more women to this union." She wagged her finger. "Hi-bo, John." The room erupted in giggles. "Yebo, ma," John said sheepishly. But Gogo Mavis was not done. She opened her worn Bible and read aloud to passages. One from 1 John 1-9 about confessing sin, and another from Romans 5-8 about Christ's sacrifice. "Do you see?" she asked softly. "We have sinned, but Jesus already paid for that sin. We must repent, and not because we are beyond redemption, but because we are loved enough to be forgiven." Tears shimmered in the lamplight, from Alana, from Zuri, even from Joseph. One by one, they bowed their heads and prayed. And there, in the heart of the Zikalala home, grace poured over generations. Shame gave way to forgiveness, and a family, messy, unconventional, deeply human, found its way back to God. When they returned to Cape Town, life unfolded into a new rhythm, different from what any of them had once imagined, yet more beautiful than they could have hoped for. There were ordinary days and difficult ones, moments of laughter and moments of tears. But for a family stitched together by faith, forgiveness, and love, even the hard days felt like blessings. Zuri's new home, the one John had built quietly as a gift, stood proudly across from the main farmhouse. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of dignity, of her place within this unusual union, and of John's unwavering love and commitment. Not long after they settled back into life, Zuri's small frame began to struggle under the weight of her growing belly. It was clear she was carrying more than one child. And then, in a moment that felt nothing short of miraculous, she gave birth to 3 beautiful identical girls. They named them Anaya, Amaya, and Akaya, names that flowed like a hymn, names that spoke of grace and beginnings. Their cries filled the farmhouse with the very music John had always dreamed of hearing. His land, the land his family had tended for generations, now echoed with the laughter of daughters, born of love, sacrifice, and redemption. But their story did not stop there. Zuri's womb became a wellspring of new life. A few years later, she gave birth to another baby girl, Sammy, joyful and spirited, the sunshine of the household. Then came twin boys, named Piet and Jacob, after their grandfathers. Not long after that, a gentle, wide-eyed girl named Melissa joined the family. And finally, a son they named Zachary, in honor of Zuri's beloved younger brother. Each child was celebrated. Each was cherished. Together with Alana's children, Brianna, Sonia, Daniel, Gabriella, and Ian. They formed a family so deeply bonded that no one outside could tell where one branch ended and another began. They grew up side by side, their laughter ringing across the fields. Their love for one another as natural as the rain. John's dream, the dream he had spoken aloud to God on so many sunrises, had come true. His land was alive again with children's footsteps, their laughter weaving through the wind like a promise fulfilled. And Zuri, the shy, intelligent girl who had once doubted whether she could rise above her circumstances, did more than anyone expected. She pursued her studies with unwavering determination, even as she raised her children. Books shared space with baby bottles, and late-night studying followed bedtime stories. And in time, she stood proudly in her graduation gown, earning her PhD in engineering. It was one of John's proudest days, not because of what the title meant, but because of the strength and grace Zuri had shown every step of the way. She was not just a wife or a mother. She was a builder, a dreamer, a woman who defied every limitation placed before her. The Stain family thrived. Seasons passed. Children grew. The farmhouse walls echoed with Sunday hymns and bedtime prayers. And in a world that once looked on their union with suspicion and judgment, they built a life rooted deeply in love, imperfect, unconventional, but wholly theirs. Their children, all of them, grew up bound by a love that nothing could break. They were living proof that beauty could rise from brokenness, that grace could weave together what the world called impossible. And so the story of John, Alana, and Zuri, born out of longing, forgiveness, and faith, became not a scandal but a legacy of love, a legacy of family, a legacy that would outlive them all. And as the sun set over the cape, John walked the land he loved, children's laughter rising on the wind, a hymn to the God who had turned his greatest sin into his greatest blessing. The end.
Every story has a moment where love must choose. Between fear and faith, between shame and grace. Zuri's journey reminds us that even when life takes unexpected turns, God's plan still leads us toward redemption. What began as forbidden's love became a blessing, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. And sometimes, honesty is the first step toward healing. Families are mended, hearts are tested, and destinies are rewritten. One act of forgiveness at a time. Because in the end, love isn't the sin, it's the lesson. Thank you for watching A Sin Called Love, the blessing and the return home. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in Zuri's story. I'm ascending faith, reminding you that faith grows strongest in the places where love is tested. Until next time, stay rooted, stay prayerful, and stay in love. Next episode coming soon.